I want to go over again President Trump's world view. It has changed in his second administration from his first. It's important for everybody to know how the president is processing the amazing amount of information that he gets every day. First of all, Mr. Trump believes the executive branch now has to be the most powerful and the most impactful part of the United States government. And that is because Congress is so partisan, so divided, it acts so slowly that literally nothing would get done if the president didn't sign executive orders and take the lead into trying to do what he wants to do. So just deferring to Congress, nothing's going to happen. They can't even pass a spending bill. So that Mr. Trump has kind of diminished Congress. And I think he's pretty much correct there. You're going to throw it into Congress, you're not going to get anything. It's going to take forever. Secondly, the world in Mr. Trump's eyes is divided very simply. You're either pro-America or you're anti-America. If you're pro-America, we'll try to help you. If you're anti-America, we're going to hurt you. That's what it is. Now, there are some places that he doesn't care about. All right, it's just a minor thing and doesn't pay attention to. But it's a very simplistic view of the world. Now, he's also a man who tries to convince, and he will make deals with people that he doesn't particularly like. And he does that in his mind to improve America, America first. That's what that's all about. And third, President Trump firmly believes that he knows best. What are you going to do? I mean, the man's brilliant. You have to admit it. Nobody else has come close to him as far as elevating from a business portfolio into the most powerful man in the world, two-term president. Come on. You got to give him the credit for accomplishment. So he thinks he knows best. Even when I speak with him, I don't try to outdo him or top him. I do try to convince him by giving him, a perspective that is easily understood. I don't weigh him down with a million details. But I know, and everybody else knows, that if Donald Trump decides something, very hard to persuade him otherwise. So I'm happy to give you his worldview. If you have any questions about it, bill@BillO'Reilly.com. Here's a talking points memo, a new approach to control illegal immigration. So yesterday I just scorched 10 states who are in rebellion against the federal government. So if you are a premium or concierge member on BillO'Reilly.com, you can watch our show and get a transcript anytime you want. All right? And that is a very big convenience if you are a seeker of knowledge. So we went over that this is a rebellion, and my column is up on BillO'Reilly.com that tells you which the states they are and what they're doing. And it's ironic because it happened 157 years ago, I believe it was. Andrew Jackson, same thing with South Carolina, and Jackson took care of South Carolina. You can't be in rebellion against the federal government. Well, anyway, I am now going to put forth to you I think a pretty good solution, not a 100% solution, but something that would work. So we have a 1952 immigration law. 1952 has not been upgraded because both parties don't want to upgrade it. They both use it for political advantage. So there's no drive to have a new immigration bill or laws, set of new laws, none. So 1952, and President Truman vetoed that bill, but his veto was overridden by Congress. The reason that Truman vetoed it was he didn't believe the bill had enough non-white opportunities for people to come to the United States. It was almost all white people that were allowed in here. That's why Truman vetoed it. Anyway, as everybody knows, Joe Biden let everybody in, no restraints. And according to the Migration Policy Institute, pretty good. They're pretty good. 14 million foreign nationals crashed in here under Biden. 14 million. Now, there's a lower number put forth by Pew Research, 11 million. But it's still a colossal amount of people. Out of those 14, 11, whatever number you want to take, 10 to 15% are criminals, people who will hurt you. And that is a colossal number, too, that you add the foreign criminals to the domestic criminals, and you have a wave, and we've seen it. All right. Now, Biden didn't care. The Democratic Party doesn't care. In fact, the radical end of the Democratic Party continues to want an open border. That's what you're seeing in Minnesota. These people screaming about ICE and impeding ICE, they don't want any restrictions. And they don't want to hunt down the criminals. That's who they are. It's hard to believe, but that's who they are. And you got to accept it. Okay? So you can't surrender to it. And if I was on a Hannity radio program today, you might want to listen to that. I said, if I were the president, I'd have the FBI interviewing mayors and governors who will not enforce immigration law. By interviewing, I mean, you go in, the feds go in, you sit them down and you say, why are you not doing X? Why are you not doing Y? When you know that federal law trumps your state law. The federal law, you know that in the Constitution. That's what I've been doing now. Because if you're going to rebel against the United States and you're leading the rebellion, you're in trouble. So that has to be built. But that's not the solution. Here's the solution. So by executive order, again, Congress would never vote. You never get it into the Senate. Okay? By executive order, President Trump signs a proclamation that says if you are in this country without proper documentation, you need to go to your post office where there will be a Homeland Security form that you have to fill out. And the form will be your name, where you live, are you employed, how many children do you have, where did you come from, on and on and on. You fill it out. You put it back into the prepaid envelope and you send it to Washington, to Homeland Security, which then enters your questionnaire into a database. Now, you have 90 days to do it. That's fair, 3 months to do it. If you don't do it, then you are subject to immediate detention and deportation. That's it. You're going. And I don't think there's a court in law that would block that, because that's national security. So then you separate the people, and the thugs, the criminals, are never going to answer the questionnaire, ever. So you put them in a category, and then you have the so-called law-abiding migrants in another category, and then you adjudicate them. So it goes into immigration courts, where you'd have to hire a lot more judges to do it, but they look at it and they say, there are some people who have claimed asylum. There are some people that are married to American citizens. On and on. What's your story? And then the federal government sends you a conclusion. You have to appear at this point, or you're okay for a year, whatever it may be. Okay? And you have to carry that card wherever you go. So if ICE stops you, you produce the card, I'm cooperating, then ICE lets you go. Unless you commit a crime, unless they're hunting you for a crime, of course. So that way you get an orderly basis of deportation. You get to know who's here. And again, the bad guys aren't going to cooperate, make it a lot easier to get them out. You don't have that card, you can't produce it. Okay, it's like a license. Where's your ID? You gotta produce it. It's part of your ID. So what's the downside to that? The liberals will say privacy. Privacy? What are you talking about? You're not supposed to be here. It's a privilege to be here. You have to go through a process to be here. Privacy? I don't believe the courts, the state courts in the rebellion places, of course, but federal courts are going to go, this makes sense. And this allows the federal government to step away and use a less heavy hand, which is good for the nation. All right, I can't do better than that. And I've been thinking about this for a long time. And again, Bill at BillO'Reilly.com, Bill at BillO'Reilly.com. I'd like to know whether you support or oppose that. And that's all right, Ice. There's not really anything new here other than there's a report today that the ICE agent who shot Ms. Good last week has internal bleeding. Now, it's sketchy. More will come out on it, but it's been released. Now, that can only happen if the vehicle that Ms. Good was in hit him. But I'm not trying this on television. It's not right to do that. But you need to know what's surfacing here. So everybody took sides. I saw the video. I saw it's bull. If it ever gets into a courtroom, and it won't, then you'd go frame by frame, as I analyzed, and then you'd hear from the ICE agent and then witnesses, whatever. Okay. But I don't think any of that's going to happen. But if the man does have internal bleeding, that's pretty big. So that's the latest on that. Now, there's a website called Mediaite. It deals with a lot of press stuff, and it's a good website. You know, it used to tilt really far left, and they brought it back to left center. There's a guy who created it, along with a few others, Dan Abrams, Colby Hall. He writes a column, and the column's pretty good. Enough is enough. It's basically criticizing Donald Trump's overreach as president of the United States. I'll read you a portion here, and then we'll bring in Mr. Hall. Quote, what distinguishes the current moment is not the impulse to push boundaries, but the scale, speed, and brazenness with which these accumulated precedents are being exploited. Obama used drones and faced criticism, but operated within executive branch legal frameworks. Trump extracts foreign leaders and announces it as a fait accompli. At home, the same logic is playing out through federal law enforcement. ICE agents are defended reflexively before facts are known, before investigations are complete. Oversight is dismissed as obstruction. Questions are treated as attacks. Power is insulated first, examined later. Unquote. Colby Hall joins us now from Brooklyn. So the mindset of the President of the United States is that his opposition is so entrenched that they don't care about what's good for the country. And so he has to cut through that. So he can't go to Congress and say, I want to remove Maduro, and then Congress votes on it 5 months later because no Democrat will ever vote for anything that Trump wants. This is the president's mindset. Do you understand that?
I do. I think that's a generous description. And I'll say, first of all, thanks for having me on. Secondly, I agree with a lot of what you said during your talking points, right? I find that we're pretty much aligned on a lot of this stuff, especially the concern with sort of Denmark and Greenland, which is remarkably risky on a number of levels, not just politically. My column, Enough is Enough, was really about how under an executive branch that literally acts without impunity or with impunity, with zero checks and balances, is acting in a way that really sort of reinforces might makes right, which is a philosophical construct that we long moved past, and it's not really democratic. And the actions of this president reveal a nation that increasingly doesn't look like the America that I grew up and I still love very, very much.
See, I don't have that. I don't have that perception, and I'm just about 25 miles from you in my dwelling. And when you say that Trump operates without any constraints, the course rule that the president could not send National Guard to LA and a few other cities because he didn't reach the bar of impending chaos. So he took them out. Trump took the National Guard. He withdrew. So he's been constrained.
It wasn't constitutional. Posse comitatus basically says federal government cannot send in troops unless the governor of the state asks for it because of chaos.
And that's what was ruled.
He's flouting the democracy, or he's flouting the Constitution.
But he's
that's
obeying.
A constitutional crisis.
He's not running roughshod. Well,
right.
Okay, but that's the way it always happens, Colby. Come on. You take an action and then there's a reaction. That's the way the government always runs.
Here's what I would say. you could defend the extraction of Maduro. The sort of way that that was defined as we can do whatever we want with the Western Hemisphere because it affects our national security, and we're going to use that as a pretext to now threaten to, sort of bomb Iran and to then just sort of invade and take Greenland. Like you said, that really threatens and is very risky to our NATO alliance. To be clear, and I want to say this, I have given credit to the Trump administration where I feel like they've deserved it. And in particular, I think the way that the Trump administration has handled Iran vis-a-vis Israel was masterful and deserves a great deal of credit. I also give him an incredible amount of credit for the way that he cleaned up the abject horror that is the border. The worst thing that Biden ever did was just look away. And I think one can be for getting bad guys out, cleaning up the border, but also be opposed to masked ICE agents shooting protesters. And I don't think Renee Good should be dead as a result of trying to drive away or even
and
in the car.
I don't either.
Right.
But
I think
that doesn't mean that what the ICE agent did carries any criminal intent, because I have said, and you know this, de-escalate it when you have a life-death situation. And some of my viewers don't like that. They don't want to hear that. Okay, but every law enforcement agency that I know of has a de-escalation program when life and death is on the line. So I'm behind the law. But Trump is saying, and with absolute validity, I can't bring in Maduro to Congress. I can't bring in nuke bombing in Iran to Congress because the other side hates me so much, they're never going to support it. They'll drag their feet. We can't operate secretly in that regard. We can't do military operations with any kind of effectiveness if you're going to debate him for 2 months. And he's right. And when Noriega came out, that shattered that. And that'll never even get into the courts. Maduro's never going to get in. Okay? He'll be convicted in Brooklyn. You should go over and see him. He's right near your house. All right? And then he'll go to the penitentiary in Colorado. And that's what's going to happen. And there's not going to be any court hearing about Maduro. I don't even think the ICE agent is going to be prosecuted. Now, do you agree with me that there are 10 states in open rebellion to the United States government because they fail to obey the law? It's okay to protest the law. There's no problem with that. But when you say, and that's what Walls, Fry, all of these people are saying, I'm not going to obey the law that has been passed by Congress, not Trump. I'm not obeying it. You're in rebellion, are you not?
I think rebellion is a narrative that oversteps considerably. I'm old enough to remember when states' rights were a big talking point on the right, and now that's gone away, right? Like suddenly we don't care about states' rights and their ability to make decisions about stuff that now.
Depends on the issue. If you want,
you are basically making situational decisions, right? And honestly, previously, what you just said, you just basically said Trump doesn't want to take Maduro to Congress because he knows he won't get what he wants. I'm sorry, you don't get to pick and choose what the Constitution says.
You do if you have national security concerns behind you. Yes, you do.
But that's very subjective. And to say that there was a national security threat by Maduro, I think is hyperbole at best. I think it's absurd.
Tons of narcotics are coming in here.
But far less drugs from other places. Please let me finish. Look, the whole point of the Constitution is checks and balances. You can't simply say I'm going to avoid checks and balances if I know that a congressional check and balance is not going to give me what I want.
But you
and
can,
that perfectly illustrates my point.
You can if there's precedent about national security. After 9/11, all of that changed. All of it changed.
So herein lies the gray area of this dialogue, and I appreciate the chance to describe it. I think there's overreach, and I think a lot of people feel that there's overreach. Honestly, in hindsight, I care less about the Maduro extraction because he's clearly a bad guy. And, this is very personal for me because my nephew is on USS Ford. He's a naval intel officer, and he was very much a part of the whole Growler part. And I'm extremely proud of him, but I'm also concerned about him.
It's a good debate, but I live in the real world and I know what's going to happen. And Trump is not going to lose any of these things at all because of the national security.
He's losing the polling battle. When it comes to ICE, only 28% of the people are sort of agreeing with the narrative that the ICE agent was justified in shooting her.
Well,
That's
now
very,
if
very
he has
low.
injuries, that polling is going to change. But even if it doesn't change, all right, Trump is basically saying this, and I'll give you the last word on it. My job, I was elected to protect the American people, and I'm going to do it. And I am not going to submit to some theoretical process when I believe I have the authority to take out people like Maduro, the Mullers, people who are threats to this country. And that's his mindset. And the only way you constrain it is the Supreme Court. That's the only way. Says no. And the federal court said no to guard in LA and other places, Oregon, all right, and Trump pulled them back. Last word.
I think you're being very generous. I don't think a lot of people feel like mullahs in Iran pose a direct threat to their lives. I think
billions to terror groups? Billions to terror groups?
I'm telling you, I think geopolitically they are a huge threat and they should be extracted. And you and I agree largely on the foreign policy there. I'm talking about politically. I don't think a lot of people in Overland Park, Kansas, where I grew up, see that as a perfect threat. I also think that a lot of people want immigrants who are illegals extracted from our nation, but they don't want to see masked ICE agents invading homes without a search warrant. They don't want to see protesters shot in the face.
I'll see that point that ICE has to tighten it up a little bit and has to be more, give more of an explanation. All right, Colby, very good debate, very lively. I want everybody to read your column on media. Thanks for taking the time. Okay, be good pins, right? Or I'm good, whatever. I think it was be good, right? So these are at the Golden Globes, which the ratings for the Golden Globes are catastrophically low. And that was expected, but there are the pins. So I said to my staff, where do these pins come from? You know, you can't like go to CVS and buy them. So they came from the ACLU. Of course they did. Move On, other far left organizations. They sent out blasts on their social media to the far left people, said, hey, we're going to be at certain Golden Globe events. We'll have the pins. You come over, you can get them. That's how it happened. And that's my point. This stuff isn't organic. This stuff is real well organized against ICE. And final thought, I was in Manhattan last night, business dinner, right? And, you know, look, I'm born and raised here. I know the city as well as anybody. It's out of control now, but, you know, it's not, nobody bothers me in the city. Everybody's very nice. So I go to this restaurant because that's where the business dinner was. The most expensive restaurant I've ever seen in my entire life. Prices are unbelievable. Unbelievable. I'm not paying, but I didn't rack it up. Okay, I had an appetizer, I had some lobster bisque, fabulous. I'm not going to tell you the name of the restaurant, it's not fair. And then I had a steak, which I don't eat a lot of red meat anymore, but I hadn't had one. I needed some protein, so I had a steak. Anyway, Monday night, place is packed. And if you go to a restaurant like that in Manhattan, you look at $150 just for you. Just for you. And that's maybe 2 drinks, maybe a little wine, a glass of wine, and maybe something else, coffee at the end. $150. And I'm going, look at this place on a Monday. So people got money, and they're spending it. Thank you for watching and listening to the No Spin News. I'm Bill O'Reilly. We'll see you again tomorrow. There's no question President Trump is governing in a non-collaborative way. All right? That means his way or the highway. And if you don't like it, then you can take him to court or try to get Congress involved or whatever. But there is a method, to use a cliche, to the president's madness. So he believes he has a mandate, 77 million Americans voted for him, to correct what the Biden administration screwed up, which is colossal if you are any kind of fair analyst. Just the border alone is so catastrophic. And President Trump says, look, the American people elected me to clean this mess up, and I'm going to clean it up. In addition, I'm going to impose a new world order on the globe. Foreign policy is going to be pro-American. I am going to create a country that is so powerful that few will defy it. But I don't need Congress to do it. And I don't need the courts, because you can litigate all day long, but it just holds it up. Trump wants to go fast, and he has in his first year. He doesn't want Congress to be deliberating for 5 months, and he doesn't want it. So the question then becomes, is he overstepping his authority? Is the president overstepping? And that will be debated this year. Okay, 2026, you're going to have a lot of definition there. But in the meantime, Donald Trump's going to do what he wants to do. Full steam ahead on immigration, on foreign policy, and if he's blocked, he's blocked. Meanwhile, Congress is so partisan, it's really hard to get any alternatives out of them as far as, well, we have a better idea. We in the Senate have a better idea. No, you don't. If you do, it's a mystery. And I'm talking general across the board. All right, that's not my talking points. That's just setting up my talking points, because we have three major stories in play here: Iran, ICE, and Denmark. And they're all very, very different. But President Trump's future hinges upon those three stories at this moment, and the economy as well. Okay, Iran. So right now, the Pentagon has worked up a number of military engagements there. It's just a matter of Mr. Trump's order. I don't know what they are. Nobody does. It's top secret. They've walled it off. There's no leaks. We don't know. I did talk to the president personally on Saturday, and I said, in my opinion, because I was asked, okay, I wouldn't use military action unless it's a tipping point. You don't need to send any more messages. You already did that with the nuke bombing. But if you can get them out of there, Mr. President, the mullahs, if you can get them on that flight to Moscow by, say, wiping out the Revolutionary Guard headquarters, I'd do it in a heartbeat. Got to get them out. And I believe it will happen. I think the mullahs are done. And that'll be a tremendous victory for the USA and the world. But I could be wrong. But anyway, the actions have been drawn up. We don't know when, where, we don't know. And it could happen at any time. Remember, Tehran, the capital of Iran, is 8.5 hours ahead of us. And this is not going to be a daylight action. These are going to be under the cloak of darkness. And so I'm going to be on it for the next, whenever it takes, watching. I check it every 30 minutes because all hell could break loose at any time. But again, I do believe the mullahs are done, and I really hope that's true. Okay, the second is ICE, which this is very interesting. The protests against ICE are not organic, as they say. It's not like everybody's running to the streets like Vietnam or anything like that. These are very well organized, far left generated protests. And the nexus, of course, is in Minneapolis, where Ms. Good was shot dead by an ICE agent last week. But this has not caught on across the country, even though there are 10 states in active rebellion against the federal government, which I write about in my column on BillO'Reilly.com. Okay? This is a rebellion. It's not a protest. There's a big difference. Okay? They are refusing to obey the law. Now, the third one is Denmark. And I'm going to just take a little time at the end of the talking points to explain the danger for Donald Trump here. This is the most dangerous story, Denmark, not ICE, not Iran, Denmark and Greenland. That's the most dangerous for him. Now, getting back to Iran, there are, even before any military action, liberal Americans, Democrats, who say, well, you can't keep doing this. You can't keep going into Venezuela, grabbing a dictator there, and then you go and get the mullahs out of there. You need Congress to approve all this. And I debated Chris Cuomo on News Nation last night about that subject. Go.
Let me ask you something else, though. Iran, I don't understand a legitimate basis in law for any president to say, ooh, this regime, they're bad. I don't like what they're doing to their people. I think I'll use the military and not have to go through Congress. How can the president do that in Iran?
Under the national security banner. Because Iran, and we saw that with Soleimani when Trump took him out with a drone. I wrote about that in my book, Killing the Killers. Iran continues to fund worldwide terrorism and gives them billions of dollars, billions with a B. That's a national security threat to the United States. So under national security, if you can neutralize somebody like Soleimani or ISIS, as Trump did with the assistance of Barack Obama, you can do it without congressional approval. And that's what he'll use. And that's true. So the Democrats can jump up and down, they can sue, they can do this, they can do that. The president has the authority, based upon what happened after 9/11, to take out national security threats without getting permission. And he has. All right, that's what he's doing. It's all about national security. Drug dealing into the United States, massive amounts of narcotics, national security. Okay? Mullah's funding Hezbollah, Hamas, all the terror groups, national security. Courts aren't going to go against that at the higher level. The partisan courts will, but not up in the Supreme Court or even the appeals courts. Okay. Now let's get to Greenland. So today there's a meeting, closed door, and we don't have anything yet, and that might break. If it does, I'll tweet about it at Bill O'Reilly. It's important you keep us on the band. So we don't know yet, but we know obviously a high-level meeting. Vice President's there, Vance, and Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, a meeting with the Danish Foreign Minister and his Greenland counterpart. Now, I fully expect them to work out some kind of deal because if the United States invades Greenland with troops, which is, I can't imagine that would ever happen. I said that to President Trump. I said, this would fracture the NATO alliance. You can't do that. Putin would be a winner because all the European NATO countries that turn against the United States, every single one of them. Maybe Hungary wouldn't, but that's it. You can't. And then the United States, American people don't want the U.S. military in Greenland. Every single poll shows that. And Republicans don't want it either. And then Congress, my God, they'll go crazy. And that would tilt it against the Republicans in the midterm. So there is a bill introduced by Lisa Murkowski, who's supposedly a Republican, but she's really not, and Senator Jeanne Shaheen in New Hampshire, that says you can't do this. You can't invade Greenland with U.S. troops. Now, that's going to pass the Senate. That bill is going to pass, and it might pass the House of Representatives. Now, Trump could veto it, but you can see the unbelievable deficit that President Trump would create for himself and the Republican Party. He doesn't have to do it. You know, I'm a cocky guy. You guys all know that. I said, look, send me over to Copenhagen. I'll come back with any deal you want in 48 hours. And I would. It's not that hard to get military bases up there. We've had them there in the past. Denmark's not going to object to that. Mineral rights, we can get them. We don't need to put military boots on the ground there. So anyway, I expect the deal would be worked out. I'd be shocked if President Trump ever sends U.S. military to Greenland. This is his negotiating ploy. Huff and puff and blow the house down, and then we'll get a deal. That's what he always does. But this one's very dangerous. And that's the memo. All right, so the Justice Department is investigating Jerome Powell, the Fed chair. Now, nobody cares about this, but I do. I'm one of the few that do. 72 years old. And Trump hates this guy. And so a lot of people say it's another revenge play by the president. Jerome Powell being investigated, but there's a little bit more here. So Powell had to testify in front of Congress about a $2.5 billion, $2.5 billion renovation of Fed headquarters in Washington. Now, how do you spend $2.5 billion on a building renovation? How is that possible? I'd like to know. It's my money. So I'm not real sympathetic to Powell. All right, I understand a personal animus here, but hey, $2.5 billion? Joining us now from Philadelphia, Anthony Esposito. He's the founder and CEO of Ascalon 6 Capital. Okay, so he follows all financial things, including the Fed. What's really going on here in your opinion, Mr. Esposito?
I think that Jerome Powell, and Bill, thank you so much for having me, first of all. I think Jerome Powell has positioned himself in a really bad way with the president because he's done two things that President Trump despises. First, he's attacked America. Second, he's attacked President Trump. And he's done both of those things through his seat at the Fed and monetary policy. So
how has he attacked America?
He's attacked America with his use of interest rates. If you go back to Trump 1, and I've looked at this pretty in depth, if you go back to Trump 1, we had a strong economy. We had low inflation, sub 2%. And Jerome Powell decided that he needed to increase interest rates heading into the tail end of that election, the tail end of that term heading into the election. That made zero sense. Jerome Powell's consistently saying that he's data driven. There was no data at that time to support raising rates into a healthy economy with good employment and with low interest rates. Keep in mind, his mandate is full employment and price stability. We were in that position. He was raising rates. He then was told to cut rates by President Biden when he came into office. He cut 175 basis points in 10 days, which is unheard of in 2020. Brought rates to basically zero. And then in 2021 into 22, jacked rates up as inflation was going ballistic. And we had 12, 13, 14% inflation rate under President Biden, threw rates up and created a regional banking crisis. That was that scenario at that point. Then we have a point where he is, where it was steady in rates. We're coming into the election, and he decides to cut rates again 50 basis points heading into the election to be supportive of, or you can make a very strong argument to be supportive of Kamala Harris, because there was really no reason to cut rates at that point.
Okay. All right. So we got it. We got it. So and Trump believes, and I think you're right, that number one, Powell is a deep state guy who favors the Democratic Party and was manipulating the U.S. economy to get Democrats elected. Correct? That's what Trump believes, right?
I think he pulls back the U.S. economy when he needs to under Trump, and I think he manipulates the rates to benefit the Democrats. Yes.
Okay, but Powell's out of there. He's retiring in May, so why go after him on a Justice Department beef?
Well, now I think you get to the point of the personal attack on President Trump. President Trump is taking this, in my opinion, as an attack on him. He's not only using the rates to hurt the economy and hurt the American worker, he's actually hurting Trump, whether it be downplaying or pushing back against an economy that's strong under term one, whether it be trying to influence voters heading into the election last year. I think that Trump at this point is not a fan of Powell. There's no hiding that. But I think when the Justice Department decides to investigate, or at least just ask the questions about what he said under oath in front of Congress, in front of the Senate, I don't think President Trump is going to step up and say, I don't think that we should do that. He's a big boy. He should be able to answer questions. And
I mean, $2.5 billion is a lot of dollars.
Sure is.
You know, come on.
Yeah.
All right. So there is a bit of retribution, in your opinion, in the Justice Department, but there's enough legitimacy to make it not some kind of contrived situation.
I would say I don't think President Trump had anything to do with the subpoena, but I'm sure that he's not losing sleep over it. No,
but he knew about it. I mean, it's a top-down Washington run. He might not have known about it before it was issued, but certainly he's up to speed. All right, Mr. Esposito, thanks very much. It's very kind of you to help us, and we appreciate it very much. Mexico. So yesterday there was a call, and it was between the Mexican president, Claudia Sheinbaum, who I've been researching. Sheinbaum looks like she's a very hardcore socialist. She really looks like she's out there on the left. And obviously the narcotic situation coming in is not abated. And we saw, we blew the boats out of the water for Venezuela, but that was cocaine. And cocaine is mixed with fentanyl and all that. But the majority of narcotics coming in because the Mexican drug cartels are out of control. And Trump wants to stop that. Also, and I did not know this, Mexico supplies almost all the oil to Cuba. And President Trump says he's going to allow that to happen, to continue. And I suspect he's going to do that because they're close to a deal with Havana. I think that's what's going on. Anyway, so Sheinbaum wants the money. Not a lot of money involved, but she is a socialist, so she's going to be sympathetic to Havana. So they're going to still ship the oil there. But the cartels shouldn't want to cooperate. You know, Mexican sovereignty and all that. Hey, lady, you're hurting our country. So you better work it out. Okay. Maria Carreno Machado. She is a Venezuelan who apparently won the last election, but Maduro wouldn't leave, and she was booted and won a Nobel Peace Prize. She is going to meet with President Trump on Thursday. Now, I did talk to the president about this directly on the phone, and I'm glad this meeting is taking place. Okay, I think that he's not sure if there's anybody in Venezuela who can run a country now, but I think the CIA is going to run it for the next year anyway. That's my opinion. And then you have a free election. But I think Ms. Machado should be treated with respect, and the president is going to do that Thursday. All right, now, there's been a lot going on foreign policy-wise in this hemisphere, and we'll get to Iran in a moment. But there's a guy that we like. He's a professor of history at the University of Arkansas, and he's got a book, John Quincy Adams, A Man for the Whole People. And Adams is very involved with foreign policy because he was an ambassador overseas in the early part of our republic. And Randall Woods, Dr. Woods, joins us now from Fayetteville, Arkansas. So you say apparently that John Quincy Adams would not have approved of Donald Trump trying to reshape this hemisphere to be more pro-American. Do I have it correct?
No, I think that he would approve efforts to recreate the Americas to suit our interest. I'm not sure he would have gone about it in exactly the same way. The Monroe Doctrine was both expansionist and isolationist. It was a warning to Europe, the Holy Alliance, to stay out of hemispheric affairs, but it was also a kind of statement that the hemisphere was going to be, we were going to be the hegemon in the hemisphere and not Europe.
Right, but I would get an A in your class because my hand would go up and go, hey, doctor, did you know that John Quincy Adams was Secretary of State under James Monroe? How about that? Okay, yeah. That's an A. So that's when the Monroe Doctrine was forged, John Quincy Adams was standing right there going, yay. And now we have the Monroe Doctrine, which isn't that much difference in the Monroe Doctrine. It's really not, is it?
Yeah, it is. It's about the kind of threat. You know, the U.S.-Latin American relations is a history of U.S. intervention in Latin America, from the Spanish-American War, when we converted Cuba into a protectorate, through Theodore Roosevelt's Big Stick, and then Woodrow Wilson's missionary diplomacy. We intervened, in the 1930s because of the threat of Japanese and Nazi aggression, and then during the Cold War to combat Castroism and the threat of Sino-Soviet imperialism. But I don't think there's the existential threat now.
Well, let me challenge you on that. Narcotics flooding into this country, killing millions of Americans over periods of time. And they're coming from nations in Central and South America. That's a national security threat, is it not?
Nobody's forcing Americans to take drugs.
No, that's true. But you have... No. Nobody forces anybody. And I have been very harsh on drug addicts because they're helping these cartels. However, that doesn't negate the threat to the country because we have a bunch of idiots that want to get high. And these cartels and Maduro and the Colombian guy, who's going to be neutralized very quickly, soon, these are people making money off hurting our country. So a president's supposed to just do nothing about it? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm not sure that's a good reason. I think that Maduro was a bad actor, is a bad actor.
No, he's a corrupt guy. He's got indictments all over the place.
Sure, but why don't we? There's a lot of other corrupt regimes around the world.
Well, you're doing a what about now? We'll knock them down one by one. You got Noriega out of there. It wasn't a scream policy then, and it's the same thing with Maduro. And now, did you know that Maduro seized, and along with Chavez in Venezuela, $19 billion worth of U.S. assets? And people are complaining about Trump seizing their oil or regulating their oil? What are you supposed to do? Just walk away, doctor, of $19 billion in theft? Is that what you would do?
Why did Donald Trump pardon the Honduran president?
What? Say that again?
Why did Donald Trump pardon a convicted drug dealer, the former president of Honduras?
Well, he did that for political reasons inside of Honduras, as I explained on this broadcast. And it was about getting a pro-American party elected. And this guy, this thug that we convicted, is still popular down there. And that's why he did it. It was a purely political move. So, but you can what about all day long. I'm not saying that everything Donald Trump does is correct. I'm saying the overarch of challenging anti-American countries that are hurting me, my children, my family, is a legitimate way to use our power. Last word.
Absolutely, I agree with you. I just think it's there's a better way to do it.
What better way? Then how would you stop all the tons of narcotics coming in here?
If you look at the history of regime changes during the Cold War, they used the CIA.
Well, that's what they're using now. The CIA ran that entire Venezuelan operation.
The CIA is an alternative to armed intervention.
The CIA designs the military operations, military action. The Pentagon carries them out. Anyway, very provocative. The book is John Quincy Adams, A Man for the Whole People. And I'm sure you knew this, Doctor, that John Quincy jumped naked into the Potomac River every day. You know, I don't know if that had anything to do with his foreign policy, but
absolutely.
He get a little brisk. Okay. Thanks for hearing that.
He gathered quite a crowd.
Here's the final thought of the day. Watching the Islanders, my favorite hockey team. And this happened. Roll the tape.
Schaefer had his stick snapped and quickly was handed a stick. And now racing to the bench is Heineman to pick up a new twig. As he quickly handed his off to Schaefer. Barzal has it. And a puck floats off his stick, so the zone cleared by the factor. And that is Ryan O'Reilly. He is so good, they just called him the O'Reilly factor, right? He impacts every player he seems to play with.
That's right. That was his nickname in St. Louis. His teammates gave him that. They called him the, not the factor. That's a huge, huge compliment. And he certainly won the Conn Smythe. He's played international for Canada, Stanley Cup winner in St. Louis as the captain. He's earned that nickname.
Well, it's a compliment to us, that's for sure. And Ryan O'Reilly is a tremendous player. I got a call from Dennis Miller years back when he was at a St. Louis Blues game and Ryan O'Reilly was playing for the Blues. He said, hey, they're all chanting the factor when Ryan O'Reilly comes out. So thank you. That's all I can say. It's a nice compliment when you go Islanders, second place. Come on, we're watching them. Thank you for watching and listening to the First Place No Spin News.